Hi everyone, Coach Sullivan here again with MJS Coaching Football. To my subscribers, I thank you, and non-subscribers, I'm hoping to tease you into pushing that button. This past fall, I completed my 38th year coaching football, and I was a defensive coordinator, but over that time, I've also been an offensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, longtime head coach, and all of this at both the collegiate and high school levels. In this presentation, I'm going to talk to you about one of our prisoner games, although it's not necessarily a game, as you'll see, that we call hands. Okay? And so over here will be the key terms so you can better understand how we execute hands, what the purpose of calling hands is, when it can be used or should be used. Okay? And then over here, I have on the top our base odd front for an example, and then down here I have one of our even fronts, again, for an example. Okay? And it'll bring in a key coaching point as well relative to nothing changes as far as your assignment, but maybe where you start changes. So here we go. Okay, number one key term is hands itself. Yes, it's a prisoner game, but there are no penetrators, there are no loopers. Okay? It's a prisoner game because the same four defenders are involved. That is all three defensive linemen and our outside linebacker that we call a rover, okay, who is a part of many of our fronts, including our base odd front and this particular even front. Okay? So when it comes to determining, where we run it, the lucky Ringo is not needed. Remember, no penetrators, no loopers. So there's no lucky Ringo needed. Okay? Believe me, our guys love it. Not that there's a whole lot of thinking involved, but nonetheless, you eliminate one more thing, right? Remember, want you guys to play fast with their feet. You got to make it so they can play fast up here. So then what is hands, right? If there are no penetrators, no loopers, what's going on? So it's very simple. The four guys involved are defensive line and that rover, the outside linebacker. Now, this is situational football. On the snap of the football, they take two steps upfield as if they're rushing, and then they sit. We say take two steps and sit, two steps and sit. Okay? And when we say two steps, we mean upfield as if you're rushing the passer. Okay? Then the second part of this is they use their hands, hence the name of the game, right? Hands, to keep separation with the blocker. Okay? So we don't just stand up and do this. We take two steps upfield like we're rushing, then sit, and the hands part of it is make sure we keep separation, keep their hands off of us, so we have the ability to move around and make a play in the football. Okay? And this is the very, very big coaching point. Beyond the two steps upfield and sit and using your hands to keep separation, there is a gap responsibility. Okay, the four guys involved have a gap responsibility, and I'll show you that up in the two diagrams. Okay, because the reason they have a gap responsibility, the last term here is huge. Why hands, right? If there are no penetrators and loopers and this, that, and the other thing, well, it can be used at any point in the game, right? This is situation warranted. I mean, if it's 3rd and 17 and they're on your 37-yard line and they're pretty sure they're not going to get a first down, but they're going to try and get a field goal, what are you thinking? You're thinking draw. So you can call this in the first quarter, right, based on the situation. If the wind is a factor, so there's no way that they can even kick, right? So this can be used at any point in the game. It's not just an end of the game, 2-minute situation call. And then when you expect the draw, when you expect a middle screen, when you expect them to just play and get the ball in the middle of the field for the field goal, right? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's when you use hands. Okay? I mean, if you rush up the field, you make it easy for the offensive line to just wheel you out, take you where you want to go. If you take 2 steps and sit, that screws up their plans. And on top of it, what I'm going to show you now, when you're playing gap responsibility, that also makes it difficult. Okay? So, up top here, our rover is on a tight end. So if the tight end releases, what's the rover do? I'm going to show you all that. But let me first talk about gap responsibilities. This is our base odd front example. Okay? So in our base odd front that you see here, the defensive ends have B gap. Okay, but remember, this is a passive, so we're going to show you how this works. The nose guard typically stays in the backside A. Well, which one's the backside A, right? Okay. And the rover plays an 8 technique, so he's reading ahead of the tight, right? So how does this all play out? Well, let's start off with the first thing. 2 steps upfield and sit. Okay. This is a situation where they're going to at least set up to show pass, and then if it's draw, right? The 2 steps for each defensive end are outside, and then they sit. Outside and sit, and then they work back to B gap. So they're going to 1-2 outside, sit, and then work back into the B gap again. Hands available to keep separation. So they're working to the B gap. Okay, so when it is draw, our inside linebackers know they're C gap defenders still. The nose guard. Okay, let's say that the quarterback is right-handed. His 2 steps on the snap of the football are going to be to the left. And then he's just going to sit in that A gap. You follow me? So that's how they determine gap responsibility that way. Defensive ends, 2 steps upfield, outside, sit, and then work inside the B gap because that's their gap. In this particular instance, right-handed quarterback, so the nose 2 steps and sit in our left A gap. Again, hands available to keep separation. Now that could change if there's a definite tendency they're going to run the draw to the other side, but just for simplicity in this presentation, that's it. When it comes to the rover, he's taking 2 steps upfield, so that tight end's releasing. He's trying to avoid him at all costs anyway, it makes it easy. So when he takes 2 steps and sit, he just sits there because the defensive end's moving to B gap, so he is quasi C and D, but he's available. If the ball disappears inside, he can fold. If the ball forces to bounce, he's in a great position sitting there on the line of scrimmage, and the inside linebackers aren't even drawn up here. Okay? So down here, it's a little bit easier in that their gaps are defined because they're in alignments, right? A 1, a 5, a 3, and a 5. Snap the football, 2 steps, sit. He stays in that gap because that is his gap. 1, 2, and sit, stays in that gap because that is his gap. You see what's happening here? 1, 2, and sit, stays in the gap. That is his gap. 1, 2, and sit, stays in the gap. That is his gap. Okay? But by having their hands available, if the ball disappears, they're able to fold. Okay, 1, 2, and sitting, they're available. They play their gap first. Ball disappears. It's not a threat to that gap. Then they're available. That's the beauty of the hands. Okay, and so that's why in the situations that warrant it, like 3rd and 17, they can't make it. They know they can't make it, but they got a pretty good field goal kicker. Then this is what you call. It's a conservative call, but it's an effective call. And again, that could be at any point in the football game. That's another big part of having hands in our repertoire. So I hope this was helpful. And as I said at the beginning to my subscribers, I thank you. Non-subscribers, I hope I teased you into pushing the button. Everybody, I hope if you have a question, you reach out to me at CoachMJSullivan@gmail.com. I want to thank you for watching MJS Coaching Football, and I'd like to thank YouTube for providing this platform.